from the Met Office. Staying clear in the north during the next 24 hours, but a marked change in the south where cloudier conditions will move in, along with showers or longer spells of rain. We've still got high pressure in charge to the north of the UK, and that's maintaining an easterly breeze throughout the whole of the country. But that high pressure is waning in its influence, and that's going to allow some weather to return to England and Wales. Certainly additional cloud moving in on Thursday evening, some showers at first before perhaps some longer spells of rain into eastern parts of England by the end of the night. With a breeze here as well as the cloud, it's going to stay frost-free, 4 to 6 or 7 Celsius. But for Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, clear skies and lighter winds will allow a touch of frost, especially for central and northern Scotland, with temperatures here in rural spots below freezing. A sunny start, though, in the north first thing. Meanwhile, across England and Wales, we've got cloudier conditions and a band of rain moving across central and then towards southwestern parts by the afternoon. That wet weather will be persistent in places, but it will break up more generally into showers, with some sunshine in between. However, it will be a cooler day with 12 or 13 in the south, whilst we keep the warmth across northwest Scotland, 16 to 18 Celsius here, or even 19 in some of the warmer spots. But for the northeast of Scotland, some mistiness around the coast. That will persist on and off through the day, and it will return more widely into Friday night. Meanwhile, outbreaks of rain start to affect northern England, southern Scotland and Northern Ireland by the start of the weekend. A few showers further south, but also some mist and fog for southern counties of England and South Wales as we begin Saturday. That soon disappears. There'll be some sunshine for a time, but perhaps some more persistent rain pushes into the southwest of England by Saturday afternoon. And we've got this persistent band of rain for Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, as well as northern England, along with a few heavy showers across central parts. So the weather turns more unsettled over the next few days with rain or showers, and it will also feel cooler.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit off.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like.
Absolutely.
On Jubes and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight, Dominic Raab's political future hangs in the balance as Prime Minister Rishi Sunak delays his decision on the so-called bullying allegations against his deputy. But surely it's an open and shut case when these are the worst accusations snowflake civil servants can come up with.
Some officials who had to work with Dominic Raab were offered therapy.
We've had reports of civil servants bursting into tears before and after meetings.
What I describe as microaggressions.
I'll explain why the woke blob's latest witch hunt must fail in my digest next. Before my superstar panel weigh in tonight, I'm joined by Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicol. Then Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie has his say on the incompetent civil services anti-democratic mission to bring down this Conservative government. Also coming up, as Sunak wisely listens to Tory rebels and toughens his illegal migration bill, is stripping European judges power to block deportation flights enough? And does it really make you right-wing to want to stop the boats? That's our big debate shortly. Elsewhere on the show, as Humza Useless is slammed as a rabbit in the headlights before another humbling appearance for the crisis-ridden SNP leader at Holyrood.
I know there are some, of course, serious issues for the party that I lead, the SNP, to address. I'm not going to shy away from that.
Is David Frost right that the SNP's implosion is a chance to put the failing devolution movement into reverse? We'll get stuck into that in the media buzz. The York-Sussex rivalry goes up another notch as Fergie aims another dig at Harry and Meghan.
You mustn't sit on the fence. You're either one in or out, but don't muck around.
Lady Colin Campbell, Phil Dampier and Paul Burrell joined me throughout the show to tackle that bombshell, hopes of a Harry reconciliation with the King, and much more of the week's royal drama. Also on the way, should Manchester's famous football clubs ditch their historic crests because the ship that adorns them has supposed links to slavery? That's the latest anti-British brainchild from The Guardian's increasingly deranged woke campaigners, which Matt Letizia and Peter Shilton, both legends in their own right, will tackle in the clash. Plus, with Rosie Duffield and Miriam Cates crossing the political divide in the name of feminism, does Labour need to bring an end to its war on women? Former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe weighs in big witty style. As ever, we'll have the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages the moment they're off the presses, and I'll crown my final greatest Briton and Union jackass of the week too. This is Dan Wootton tonight. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel. I've been watching today the Westminster establishment, the MSM, the likes of Robert Peston just willing Rishi Sunak on. They want Dominic Raab gone. I'm going to tell you why that is a huge mistake in my digest in just a moment. First, though, the latest developments with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. Well, the Prime Minister will not be deciding upon the fate of his deputy, Dominic Raab, this evening. Rishi Sunak said earlier he had full confidence in Mr Raab and has all day been considering the findings of an independent inquiry into alleged bullying. The Deputy Prime Minister himself requested the report as the first allegation was made in November last year. 8 formal complaints have been made by staff about Mr Raab's alleged behaviour during his roles as Foreign Secretary, Brexit Secretary and as Justice Secretary. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry says a decision needs to be made quickly.
I think if he's got this report, he should just read it, and if the man's a bully, then Dominic Raab should go. It's really quite simple. There are many more pressing issues than this. Whilst the Conservative Party continue to be in chaos, the public have completely different priorities. Actually, what we should be doing is we should be having politicians who are focused on the cost of living crisis, on why it is that wages are stagnating, why we're having to wait for months, if not years, for hospital treatment. That shouldn't be what politics is about. Politics should be about making people's lives better.
Now, more than 43,000 people who dialed 999 died by the time an ambulance arrived last year. That's according to statistics given to the Liberal Democrats. The data suggests an average of 120 people dying daily before the emergency service reached them. The Lib Dems say the government is starving the NHS of the resources it needs. And that, as the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges is urging junior doctors and the government to finally find a solution to their deadlock over pay for the sake of patients and the wider NHS. Nearly 200,000 hospital appointments had to be rescheduled following the junior doctors' strike action last week. The Academy had helped to secure a deal between both sides following strike action back in 2016. And let's just bring you a couple of new breaking lines reaching us from the United States. American actor Alec Baldwin's lawyers are saying they're pleased with the decision to dismiss the case against their client. This news just into us in the last 20 minutes or so. Alec Baldwin had been charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter for the death of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the set of the movie Rust, after a revolver he was rehearsing with fired a live round and killed her. He was also charged with injury of the movie's director, Joel Souza. Baldwin's lawyers say they encourage a proper investigation into the tragic accident. Now, the astronaut Tim Peake has congratulated the American SpaceX team on Twitter after their partially failed rocket launch today, encouraging them to test, learn and try again. Elon Musk's SpaceX sent the new rocket called Starship into space from South Texas earlier today. The main launch went initially successfully, but the booster didn't separate properly as planned and it exploded moments later. But the SpaceX team were optimistic, describing the moment as a rapid, unscheduled disassembly that would give them even more data to learn from for next time. Nothing like looking on the bright side. That's all from me. I'm back in an hour.
The future of the Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab tonight hangs in the balance. But so too does the future of the civil service in the UK to be able to frustrate, derail and subvert a democratically elected government delivering on the wishes of the British people. The woke blub cannot win. They want to destroy the country in order to bring down this Conservative government, in large part because they will never forgive them for delivering on the people's will to Brexit. Raab is the latest in a long line of powerful Brexiteer ministers who the woke blob have tried to pick off. The highest profile was the former Home Secretary, Priti Patel, who they also farcically claimed was a bully. Boris Johnson rightly stood by one of his closest allies. He knew the stakes on illegal immigration, woke policing and terrorism were just too high to let unelected civil servants defenestrate one of his most powerful cabinet ministers. Now Rishi Sunak must prove he has the same muscle to stand up to his own, or stand behind his most senior ally. And this is not just a test of Sunak's political will. I believe it's a test of his character too. I remember these dark days. Do you remember last summer when other Sunak allies had long disappeared as Liz Truss thrashed him in the race to become Tory leader? Raab was a constant presence by his side. Besides, a pathetically snowflake culture permeates Westminster. The woke wastrels can't cope with any Tory telling them what to do, especially if said Tory is an avowed Brexiteer. I don't know about you, but I actually want a Deputy Prime Minister who is strong enough to demand answers and delivery. And yes, sometimes that might be done in an abrasive manner. Much is at stake. And the allegations we've heard so far about Raab only amount to him being a demanding boss, with talk of microaggressions, staring at someone, and even chucking his prep tomato salad into a rubbish bin.
Some officials who had to work with Dominic Raab were offered therapy. Behaviour was described as nasty, horrible and manipulative.
I saw him seething at other senior people, hard staring at you, cold fury. It was pretty sinister. And raising his voice. Lots of it was what I'd describe as microaggressions.
We've had reports of civil servants bursting into tears before and after meetings, civil servants actually being physically sick because of the fear.
Allegations about civil servants being too scared to go into his office. It's even the rather notorious claim that he once got so angry in a meeting that he threw a tomato from a Pret salad at someone.
Sack him immediately! I mean, how ridiculous. By the way, Labour's pearl clutching over Raab must be ignored. Never forget the way they stood by the proven bully John Bercow, the then Speaker, simply because he wanted to overturn the biggest democratic mandate in history to depart the European Union.
Should Labour be nominating John Bercow for a peerage given the allegations of bullying against him?
Well, I think the allegations are one thing, and I don't know whether they have any substance to them or not. There has always been a tradition of the Speaker of the House when he retires, or she retires, going into the House of Lords. It is pretty extraordinary that the government didn't nominate him for that. So I think that it was right for Labour to, I think we're doing the right thing by nominating John Bercow for a peerage.
What an utter hypocrite Thornbury is. This has been the woman who's been on television all day saying that Raab should be sacked. Look, woke blob officials are now telling their favourite newspaper, The Guardian, of Raab, if he stays in the department, senior people will want to walk. Well, good. Let them go. Raab actually needs officials committed to the cause, especially given the battle ahead for the Justice Secretary as the government enters an all-important row with the ECHR to stop the boats. But to respond now, my superstar panel, top Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. So, Alison Pearson, Sunak couldn't make a quick decision on this. And to me, that's worrying because I think this is a test of whether Sunak can stand up to the woke blob. But I also really feel it's a test in his character.
It doesn't seem a very good sign, does it, Dan? I mean, this guy, Adam Tolley's had 5 months to look into these allegations of cherry tomatoes having been dropped rather noisily into a brown paper bag. Total trauma all round. I imagine lots of the viewers will be recalling their experiences in the workplace. I mean, I spent the first few years of my career in journalism being yelled at with obscenities by small, bald Scotsmen. And everything I learned, everything I do today is based on the perfectionism that they instilled in me. Yep. So I think what we are talking about here, let's be in no doubt, bullying, actually authentic bullying, is horrible and should be stamped out, and we should be glad that it's no longer tolerated in the workplace. But what this seems to me, I've thought all along this was a political hit job. It seems to me that civil servants, if civil servants are refusing to implement the policies of a democratically elected government, and when obliged to do so, can then cry bullying, the Peloton stay-at-home classes overruling the wishes of Joe Public. And as you said, Dan, I mean, the threat of mass resignations from the Ministry of Justice, who would notice, Let them go. Let them go. They're obstructing this man. Yes, he's clearly, I met him a couple of times, he's quite a cool character, quite steely. That's not a crime. Actually asking people, do your work, this doesn't meet my requirements, I need the documents in a different order. That's what used to be called being an underling and learning how to do it. And my fear now is that the civil service, which used to be a Rolls-Royce, the British civil service was a Rolls-Royce, impartial, guiding ministers. I think it's wholly partial, wholly biased, and we should look at moving to an American system where parties bring in their own staff.
Very good point, because that's the issue, Sean Bailey. The reason why he's had to probably be a little bit tough with some of his officials is because he knows, just like Priti Patel experienced in the Home Office and just like Suella Braverman is now experiencing in the Home Office, he knows that these officials actually want to stop him. implemented his policy.
This is actually as big a problem for the civil service as it is for Raab or for Rishi, because the point is the civil service is now being increasingly looked at as being partial and delivering the things it likes and not delivering the things it doesn't like, and that's a real problem, because sooner or later people demand changes that civil servants probably don't want to make. And if you look at this particular case, it could look political, because they did to Suella Braverman, they did to Priti Patel, and now it looks like it's Raab's turn. And if Rishi...
What is it about powerful Tory Brexiteers they don't like, I wonder?
I mean, I couldn't answer that question for you, but what I can tell you is Rishi needs to make a decision quickly, because the other line of this is, what's taking the man so long? If you can't make a decision on this, we need you to make a decision on nuclear weapons, on what aircraft carried by, what we're going to do about inflation, who's going to control the Bank of England. So you should be able to do this.
And by the way, this is the big problem with launching inquiries all the time, isn't it? You kick the can down the road. It still catches up.
It's more than that. You give power. If you launch an inquiry, you give the power. You give the power away. And what the PM
He should have stood by Raab.
Yes.
He should have said, if there is any serious bullying, present me with the evidence directly. Otherwise, we're getting on with the business.
And the other thing as well, if Raab is such a monster, where were senior civil servants? Because those civil servants are in the care of senior civil servants, and they should have stepped in much earlier.
I mean, Amy, I imagine you're probably one of these woke wastrels who think that a government minister should never tell a civil servant that they're doing a terrible job.
I think it was a bit more than telling them they were doing a terrible job. I mean, he's clearly committed some extremely unpleasant management styles. He's an unpleasant bully. He is a tomato-hurling thug of a boss, by the sound of things. But more importantly, he's not very good at his job.
But that's not up to the
above all of that.
But that's not what we're discussing.
This is the man.
Yeah, you've got to raise Afghanistan. I know you're going to raise Afghanistan.
As Kabul fell.
I'm not Dominic Raab's biggest fan. That's not the point.
He should be
That's
sacked.
not the point. It's not up to the civil service to decide who remains in cabinet.
There are a litany of errors in his time as
I mean, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're not actually judging whether Dominic is a good minister or not.
You've described him as an unpleasant bully. What evidence do you have that he's an unpleasant... A bully is a very bad...
27 complaints. 8 corroborated different incidences from civil servants.
Yeah, but microaggression, staring too hard at someone, that's not bullying.
Also, let's add this to the general unpleasantness of this cabinet. Gavin Williamson's gone for exactly
but that's not what we're talking about. And let's be clear. Hold on, Amy. That's not fair. You don't have any evidence. That's a disgusting thing to say, because you don't have any evidence for that. And the most important thing, if all of these people are so horrible, where were the senior civil servants? I have worked in these environments, and you're told very early on, these people do not work for you, they work for the civil service, they have a responsibility to the civil service, and they tell civil servants, if this special advisor, minister or prime minister is bullying you, chopping you, come and speak to us.
But let me cut through the crap here, though. These civil servants are out to get many of the ministers they're working for, and what I feel so worried about, Alison, and it really upsets me, is that we start to undermine what bullying actually is. That B word is now chucked around so loosely.
It's absolutely meaningless, isn't it? I mean, Amy, I don't agree that there are these 20... they say there are 27 instances. I mean, a lot of it is just basically, someone coming in and Raab saying, that's not good enough, go and do it again.
He made me feel upset because he told me my work wasn't good. I'm sorry, that's not bullying. And microaggressions. He stared at me. You're staring at me now. Oh, my goodness. Stop committing a microaggression against me. That's bullying. Stop bullying me. Stop staring at me.
It's a highly charged environment.
Amy, you're committing a microaggression against me right now. Maybe you should be sacked.
I think it's a shame that you would undermine these people who have had the braveness to come forward and speak about their experiences.
They also, bravery.
They've only, Rishi Sunak could have spent as long as he has deliberating about this report, talking to the junior doctors.
Why do they choose the exact ministers who seem to have some passion for enforcing Conservative policies?
They did the same
Brexit.
They did the same to Amber Rudd.
So much of this always comes to Brexit. All roads lead to Brexit with the civil service, because they know that the ECHR is all connected. It's all connected. Amy Nicole. I was just joking. You're allowed to stare at me as much as you want.
Can't help
Commit
it,
your
it's just so
microaggressions
gorgeous.
against me.
We're reporting you. Don't worry,
Sean
we'll...
Bailey. I'm too scared to look at any of you now. Alison Pearce and my superstar panel are here all night. But coming up, as Fergie addresses her coronation invite snub by saying that you were either in or out of the royal family, has the Duchess of York aimed another thinly veiled dig at Harry and Meghan? Well, I think so. But my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, will tackle that and all of the week's biggest royal drama very shortly. But first, should Manchester's two famous football clubs ditch their historic crest because woke lefties at The Guardian have claimed the ship on them has links to slavery? England football legends Matt Letizia and Peter Shilton take on Stand Up to Racism co-convener Wayman Bennett in the clash next. What do you think? Dan at gbnews.uk. Voted up our poll. It's at GB News on Twitter. By the way, we've all just lost our blue ticks today, apparently. So I'm going to have to go and sign up to Twitter Blue very quickly to support Elon Musk, I think. Back in a few minutes.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m.
as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Britain's
Stand by for our royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier. But first, the clash. And after absurdly apologising for its own slavery links and demanding reparations from the royal family, the Britain-hating Guardian newspaper has a new target: the historic crests of our famous football clubs. In a column that sparked outrage, woke-topian Simon Hatterston calls on Manchester City and Manchester United to erase history and change their badges because, according to his distorted view of history, the ship that adorns them has links to slavery. Despite both clubs being founded after Britain deployed similar ships to end the slave trade, Hatterston argues the logo is emblematic of a crime against humanity and shames Manchester and its football clubs. He writes, "The ship has nothing to do with football and everything to do with the business from which Manchester made its money. The product of slavery became so subtly embedded in our culture that we celebrated it in our club badges, even without realising it." Both clubs have refused to comment, but sources stressed to the Daily Telegraph that they had no plans to modify the badges. Too right. It's clear that the unhinged woke campaigners at The Guardian will target anything of any size, from monarchy to motif, in their deranged mission to destroy our great country. But what do you think? Should Man U and Man City ditch their famous club crest? Because The Guardian claims the ship is a symbol of slavery. Dan at gbnews.uk, vote in our poll at GB News. But to tackle this now, former Premier League footballer Matt Le Tissier, England goalkeeping legend Peter Shilton, and Stand Up to Racism co-convener Wayman Bennett. Great to have all three of you here. Matt Le Tissier, this is just ridiculous, is it not?
Dan, I can't believe what we're living through. Honestly, we are living in such Orwellian times that I cannot... It is the most tenuous link, I think. I mean, we've heard some stupid things over the last few years. This has got to be right up there amongst the most tenuous link they've ever tried to try and infiltrate and try and have a go at football clubs. It is just ludicrous, in my opinion.
Wayman Bennett, you actually disagree with Matt. You think the clubs need to ditch the ships?
Well, I think they need to look at it, and I tell you why. One of the things that's happened over the last 20 years, which is something which Matt doesn't understand at all, serious study of the link between science and our own history. The slave ships between Liverpool and Manchester were connected historically. And one of the things is, if you look at the slave masters and the people that were involved in this, take Thomas Thistlewood, who was one of the people who was involved in slavery. He raped over 3,852 women. Not only that, the majority of the attacks were on children. And so my kind of view is...
But Wayman, that's nothing... Wayman, I understand that, but that's not... Can I just clarify? That's nothing to do with the ship on the crest.
No, you have to understand the link between the industrialisation and slavery.
So
right?
we should ban all ships. All pictures of ships should be banned.
The same people that founded many of those things were involved in those crimes. So what we're saying is there's no reason to link the good people of Manchester and working class people, who, by the way, oppose slavery inside Manchester, right, to link them with the masters and the rapists and the people that killed people.
It's a picture of a ship. It is a picture of a ship. So are we saying now we cannot use a ship on any logos because you're going to be accused of having connections to slavery?
That would be facetious. That would be facetious.
Well, that's what you're saying.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying the Manchester Guardian did a historical search of the link between slavery and different people in Manchester, and what they're saying is that those links should be rejected and broken.
Yeah,
and I understand how difficult it is.
But that's not why there's a ship on the crest.
No. I understand how difficult it is, because most people go into... When it talks about British history, we go into denial. I mean, you know, and one of the reasons why we go into denial...
Not denying anything.
We go into denial because, in some senses, you know, I was one of the first people that opposed Jimmy Savile and said he wasn't a national treasure. Other people defended him. Some people are prepared to speak out. No, but what I'm trying to say, that's not necessarily automatic. Some people would not speak out about it.
The BBC covered up for him for years. I understand that, but this is a very different situation, because this is a crest which has nothing to do with slavery. Look, I want to bring Peter Shilton, and we'll get back to you, Wayman, but we've got Peter Shilton. So, Peter, who do you agree with? Are you with Matt or are you with Wayman?
Well, let's just say slavery was terrible and it was quite rightly abolished, and racism shouldn't be tolerated in the modern world. So let's put that straight. but I've been doing a little bit of research actually, and there's no facts to support this at all, because I think slavery was abolished. I mean, 30 years before Manchester United was formed, and there was a lot of, and the badge itself as well. So, there's a big gap there between slavery finishing and what we're talking about. And I do feel that, there's a stigma being attached to Manchester. I mean, even in the history books, they wouldn't, in the American Civil War, and I sound a bit like an historian, but, they wouldn't handle the cotton and risk going to prison. So I think this is the wrong subject, really. A little ship on a badge. I mean, how many other ships are on badges in the UK?
I mean, that's my worry, Matt.
Is everything to do with slavery?
And Matt, that's my worry, because do we start to say that we literally cannot use pictures of ships in any logos because you're going to be accused of celebrating slavery?
Well, I wouldn't put it past the Guardian to suggest that at some point, but I'd like to ask Wayman, actually, in nearly 150 years of Manchester United's history, does he know of anybody who has ever come to him and been offended by the ship on Man United's crest or Man City's crest?
Look, to be honest with you, the answer's no. But if you ask me, have people been offended by people's position on Black Lives Matter, taking the knee, supporting anti? No. Well, you're trying to narrow my answer.
I didn't ask you that. You're putting words in my mouth.
When people have spoken out about racism and discrimination in football, there have been people, including yourself, who've turned around and said, oh, there's no basis for being able to say, like, Black Lives Matter, or try and define it yourself without understanding anything of the history of Black Lives Matter. You spoke up as an expert on it at the time, which isn't true, right? So
I was no expert.
Yes, you do.
I was no expert, Wayman.
I think this is the wrong.
Okay, just let Peter come in. Just let Peter come in.
As a professional footballer, Wayman, as a professional footballer, I supported your organisation every single time there was any initiative that was done.
It's the wrong thing. I mean,
Peter, just hold. Peter, just hold up.
The mob pulled out. Sorry, Matt. Don.
Sorry, Peter. I'll come back to you in 1 sec. Matt, you just finish your point, and then we'll bring Peter in.
Yeah, I was just saying, I supported every initiative of Show the Racism the Red Card while I was a professional footballer, supported everything I possibly could. Now, because of the whole Black Lives Matter thing, now I know what you're talking about, I refused to wear the Black Lives Matter badge. That was because I didn't agree with the points of the organisation of Black Lives Matter. That had nothing to do with the fact, you have to separate that from the fact that, of course, Black Lives Matter. Of course they do. But linking it to that organisation, which goes against a lot of my opinions in the world, doesn't make me racist for not wearing a Black Lives Matter badge.
And it's a corrupt organisation, by the way, which we now know. Final word to you, Peter Shilton.
Can I just say, Black Lives Matter organisation are over 500 different organisations. There are civil rights organisations, so you can't just condemn everything.
Well, I do condemn the Black Lives Matter organisation because they have used fundraising money to fund mansions in California for its organisers. And so I have an issue with the Black Lives Matter organisation.
You can't condemn the movement calling for equality. And I think one of the reasons why it was condemned, because it was anti-racist and it was uncovering history.
No, that's not why I ever condemned it. I condemned it because quite openly the Black Lives Matter organisation called for the overthrow of capitalism, the overthrow of the
history alone. Yeah.
Okay, Peter Shilton, you come in. Okay, just let Peter Shilton make a point. Let Peter make a point.
This has been brought up, I think, to stir
Matt, Wayman, let Peter make his point, please.
Conversation about racism and etc. I don't think. It can't be a serious, thing to take up. I think, that it's a way of stirring up racism and the history. History is history, and we're trying to change things, aren't we?
Indeed. We're stirring up division here. I couldn't agree more. And look, thank you for having the debate, the England football legend Peter Shilton and Matt Letizia, and the Stand Up to Racism co-convener Wayman Bennett. Okay. Good. I'm good. Well, I agree. That's something we can definitely agree on, Wayman. Thank you so much. I just don't agree that we shouldn't be able to use pictures of ships. So who do you back here. Should Man U and Man City have to ditch the ship? Because of The Guardian, Elliot on Twitter writes, just because The Guardian's origins may have had a closer association with slavery than they would currently prefer, it doesn't mean everyone does. From Louise on Twitter, when are all of these attempts to eradicate the past going to stop? Who randomly got to decide it as a symbol of slavery? I don't believe it is. And from Polly, slavery was abolished in 1807. Man U was founded in 1878 and Manchester City in 1880, both long after slavery was abolished. And your verdict is now when just 4% of you agree with Eamon and The Guardian that Man U and Man City should ditch their famous club crest. 96% of you say they shouldn't. And to be honest, I think that's sort of how the public breaks down usually about anything The Guardian says. Got about 4% of folk who agree. 96% of us think they're talking a whole load of rubbish. Coming up, though, as opposing MPs Rosie Duffield and Miriam Cates unite in the name of feminism, does Labour need to bring an end to its war on women? Former Tory Minister Anne Widdecombe soon. But next was Fergie making a slight dig at Harry and Meghan by saying that you are either in or you're out of the royal family. My Royal Masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier, give their expert view on that and much more of the week's royal dramas that are up next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Our amazing royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier here now, and Prince Harry's charity Centre Barley is under fire after a shocking honourable mention emerged in their financial report. So take a look at this. You can see named among numerous charitable organisations, the Duke of Delusion also thanked the Sussex Squad, aka his and Meghan's online army of trolls. While I'm sure some of them have helped raise money for the charity, that doesn't excuse those who have worked tirelessly to tear down anyone who criticises the Montecito mourners, including, by the way, attacks on our late Queen, our current Queen and the Princess of Wales. Royal experts Lady Colin Campbell and Phil Dampier join me now. So, Lady C, is Harry only encouraging his rabid band of trolls, the Sussex Squad, with this acknowledgement?
Well, yes, of course. That's exactly what he's doing. And, of course, they also get paid, because if you look in the Archewell account, you see that they pay their media people as well, and that ends up being the Sussex Squad. You know, they're called the SS for a very good reason. They are full of hatred. They have threatened the lives of the present Princess of Wales. They have even said the most dreadful things about what they'd like done to the children. I mean, it is beyond belief that Harry and Meghan can think it is appropriate to pay people like this and to give them any recognition at all. They should be starved into annihilation.
Yeah, Phil, that's the issue that I have. Harry and Meghan like to claim they're the Be Kind Brigade cleaning up the internet. Well, I'm sorry, their trolls are the most vicious, the most nasty, and as Lady C points out, the most violent of them all.
Yeah, good evening, Dad. I don't think I go quite so far as to compare them to the SS. I mean, I might call them silly sausages, perhaps. I don't know. But you know, Centre Barley is a good cause. It's a bit like the Invictus Games. You can't really take it away from Harry. It is a good cause. And, you know, I don't have any problem with him thanking them for fundraising. But where I do agree is that, to my knowledge, Harry and Meghan have never spoken out about the online trolling that goes on. And some of it does get very vicious, death threats, etc. So, you know, they preach about peace and harmony, don't they? But they could actually ask them to tone it down a bit. They could speak out about it. But after some of the things that he said in his book, Spare, you know, we know he's got a bit of a nasty streak, so he's not exactly setting much of an example.
Yeah, no, indeed. Now, look, lots going on in terms of the relationship between King Charles and Harry. Of course, the King did include in the souvenir coronation programme this old picture of Meghan. There it is, you know, when they weren't actually trying to throttle each other, or at least were pretending not to. So do you think this is honourable of the King, Phil, or is it wrong for him to keep offering olive branches to Harry and Meghan?
Well, he's certainly stuck to his guns, hasn't it? I mean, I've been saying all along that he's going to stick to this policy of not answering back, and it seems to be paying off to some extent. I've just been looking on Mail Online. Apparently, there's a poll out this evening showing that his popularity is quite high now, as is the monarchy in general, and indeed the Prince and Princess of Wales. So I think, you know, people are sort of, they don't see what he's doing as weak. They think he's doing a good job. They support the monarchy. And, you know, I think maybe he will feel vindicated by the tactics he's used. I mean, I don't know how he's been so restrained and not hit back at Harry. But so let's see what happens at the coronation. We'll see what sort of body language is like then and how they interact with each other and see how it goes from there.
Lady C, you've got some exclusive insight on this, though, that goes against the prevailing media narrative. You don't actually think Charles is grovelling to Harry?
No, absolutely not. My understanding is that the lines have been very firmly drawn. They have been adhered to. You know, it's waving olive branches in public and doing softly, because he doesn't want to inflame the situation. And also, there is a threat hanging over his head that if he doesn't manage things very delicately, that Harry can do something crazy and irrevocable. So, you know, that's a valid fear, because they're dealing with somebody who's really rather unstable. And, you know, they need to take that into account. But I think the olive branches are more apparent than real. Let's put it that way. And Meghan and Harry are getting away with very little.
Good. That's what I like to hear. That's what I hope is the case. Look, I want to lastly talk about the Duchess of York, Fergie, who broke her silence about missing the coronation this morning. She wasn't invited. But she actually, interestingly, used it to make another not-so-subtle dig at the Montecito mourners.
You're not going to the coronation, are you?
No, I'm not, actually, because it's a state occasion.
Right.
And being divorced, I don't think you can have it both ways. You mustn't sit on the fence. You're either one in or out, but don't muck around.
So, Lady C, if you're reading between the lines there, do you think Fergie is pretty much saying that Harry and Meghan should not be at the coronation?
Well, I think she's saying what she's saying, which is that you can't be half in and half out. I think she's making a statement of fact, and then from there on, it's let the chips fall where they may and let everybody draw their own conclusions. I think it's an absolutely fair and valid statement to make. I don't think she's directed it particularly at them, but I think it's a happy coincidence where everybody's concerned that it applies to them as well as to her.
Phil, I mean, look, it's hard not to have a soft spot for Fergie. She's a battler. She stayed very loyal to the late Queen. You know, she now has the late Queen's corgis. I'm just going to put it to you, though, that isn't there a slight irony in all of this? Because last time I checked, Fergie was living in a grace and favour mansion on the grounds of Windsor Castle, owned by the royal family, which sort of seems to be a half in, half out arrangement.
Yeah, if anyone's been half in and half out, it's Fergie, isn't it? I mean, she separated from Prince Andrew in 1992, I think it was, got divorced from him in 1996, and here she is all these years later, still living under the same roof. Look, you know, Fergie will say anything when she's got a book coming out. I don't think she was particularly making a point about Harry and Meghan. I think she was putting a brave face on the fact that she hasn't been invited, but she's been invited to the concert at Windsor in the evening, apparently, and the party after that. She was invited to Christmas at Sandringham, so I think she probably ought to be happy with that.
No, indeed. Oh, my brilliant royal masterminds are the best in the business. Phil Dampier, Lady Colin Campbell, with me, of course, in the run-up to the coronation. Thank you both. But coming up, as Sunak finally listens to Tory rebels on toughening his illegal migration bill by stripping European judges' power to block deportation flights, has the PM gone far enough to stop the boats? My superstar panel return to debate that soon. But next, as Labour's Rosie Duffield and Tory Miriam Cates come together in the name of feminism, is it time that the Labour Party ends its war on women? Former Conservative Minister Anne Widdecombe is live on this very shortly.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time now for Big Witty Style with former Tory MP and Minister Anne Widdecombe. And Labour MP Rosie Duffield has faced an increasingly tough time in Parliament in recent months as her own party has repeatedly turned against her for daring to defend women's rights against the militant trans lobby. Here's just one recent example of the noisy pushback she has received from her own Labour colleagues.
This bill seeks to allow anyone at all to legally self-identify as either sex and therefore enter all spaces. Does he not understand how vitally important this is at the moment?
But she was booed by her own side. And in a rare example of the feminism bringing political rivals closer together, the Daily Express this morning led with a joint interview on its front page featuring Duffield alongside the brilliant Conservative backbencher Miriam Cates, who has faced similar abuse for her defence of women's rights, in which the rival MPs unite to speak out and call for the dignity of women and girls to be safeguarded. Duffield says she has found Tory MPs on the other side of the House to be unlikely allies, stating that Conservatives in Parliament have just been really kind and made life a lot more enjoyable being here. So, Anne, as Labour MPs like Rosie Duffield are hung out to dry by their own party, astonishingly forced to rely on the protection of Tory opponents, it really is time, isn't it, for Labour to actually stop its worrying war on women?
Well, of course it is. But, I mean, we've seen the Labour attitude towards women for decades now has been they've said one thing and done another, always talking about how they're the party of women. They've never produced a woman Prime Minister yet. And now we have the trans agenda, which is what is causing Rosie Duffield so many problems. And they're effectively just ignoring the plight of women who may find their safe spaces invaded, women's refuge, women's prisons, women's changing rooms, wherever you look. Ignoring that completely to the point where the leader of the Labour Party, the leader of Her Majesty's opposition, cannot say that 100% of women simply do not have a male appendage.
Yeah, and he still won't say that. He still will not say that. Look, elsewhere, Anne, let's call him a professional wind-up merchant, and the Ryanair CEO, Michael O'Leary, has once again overstepped the mark by suggesting that Brexit will be reversed within a generation because, wait for it, most Brexiteers will be dead. The controversial boss of Europe's largest, but I'd say shoddiest airline, made the controversial comments at a Bloomberg event in which he told the audience in the next 5 to 10 years, quite a number of the Brexiteers will die, as the average age of them is about 70. Younger people coming through are much more pro-European, and he went on to say everything that was promised to the UK population, the sunny uplands and the ability to do trade deals everywhere around the world, was shown to be a tissue of lies. So, Anne, you're a staunch Brexiteer. Are you tired of nasty Ramonas like O'Leary speaking about the majority of the country in this way?
Well, it's not the first time that somebody has suggested that, eventually the Brexiteers will die off and then they can issue the whole question all over again. But what he said when he accused us of a tissue of lies about trade deals, you've only got to look at the Pacific trade deal, which we've just got. Now, when we joined the European Economic Community, it accounted for about 20% of global trade. Very respectable, good reason to join. Now it accounts for 8% and falling, whereas half of the world's growth over the next couple of decades is going to be in that Pacific bloc. And we've joined them. And the amazing thing is this, Mr. O'Leary, that they haven't demanded that we become subject to their laws. They haven't demanded the right of intervention in UK affairs. In other words, this is a genuine economic community with no political ambition.
No, indeed. And look, Anne, I've got to ask you about the dynamite political news of the day, but there's no conclusion. Will Rishi Sunak stand by his man, stand by his closest ally, or is he going to allow a politically motivated witch hunt, in my opinion, by the Westminster blob, to prove that actually they're in control of who can stay in cabinet?
Well, I think Rishi Sunak should make it very clear that he and he alone chooses the cabinet. And it is time. If there are grounds to do otherwise, that is a different matter. But it really is time that we started fighting back. And when I say we, I mean the body politic in general, against the politics of what Bill Clinton called the politics of personal destruction. And that has now become British politics. It's who hasn't declared something in the register. It's who did what at 16. It's who made an unwise tweet at 25. It's all about personal destruction. And that's got to be fought back against. And if the parties in Westminster have any sense, instead of maximising it, as they're doing at the moment, to their own advantage, what they should be saying is, OK, it may be to our advantage today, it's to our disadvantage tomorrow. Let's get together. Let's just fight back against this. Will they do it? Will they? Heck, there's no common sense in Westminster.
No, there's not anymore. What was that lovely music I could hear, Anne?
That was my cuckoo clock, for which I do not apologise, because it's
I love it.
And it chimes every hour, and it plays me a different tune every hour.
Oh, I love that. I know. I think there's got to be a comeback for cuckoo clocks, right? They're retro now, but they need to come back. I love that. I might consider investing in one.
In this country, Dan, but if you go to Austria or Germany or Switzerland, you'll find they're quite a big part of the economy still.
Really? Fascinating. Anne Widdecombe, brilliant analysis as ever. Thank you so much, Anne, and we will speak next week. But coming up, as Harry snubs the King's coronation concert to scuttle back to Meghan and Montecito, has the King's wish for reconciliation with his son just been extinguished? Princess Diana's former butler, and of course her close friend for a long time, a close friend of William and Harry too, Paul Burrell, weighs in later tonight. But first, with Sunak listening to Tory rebels and toughening his illegal migration bill, stripping European judges' power to block deportation flights, has the PM done enough to finally stop the boats? My superstar panel are going to weigh in on that next. Plus, we're going to have a first look at how the newspapers are covering this Dominic Raab story. They're hot off the press in just 2 minutes' time.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Here on GB News, we're starting the conversation and having the debate that the establishment won't have. No one will be cancelled. Join me at 4 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be discussing all the big topics of the weekend.
Oh, get cracking!
Always honest, always fun. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight, Rishi Sunak has received the report into bullying allegations against Dominic Raab, but he will not decide his fate until tomorrow at the earliest. With accusations like this, though, don't tell me this isn't a political witch hunt against the Justice Secretary by the woke blob.
Some officials who had to work with Dominic Raab were offered therapy.
We've had reports of civil servants bursting into tears before and after meetings.
What I'd describe as microaggressions.
So, should the Prime Minister stand by his closest ally in a major victory against Brexit-hating civil servants? Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie hits out at our society of snowflakes later in Uncancelled. And with the country left on tenterhooks, how are the newspapers reacting to the Raab debacle? I'll bring you a first look at tomorrow's front pages in just a moment, hot off the press. After leading lights of the Conservative Party strong-arm Sunak over the Channel migrant crisis, demanding that ministers are given powers to ignore ECHR rulings, has the PM been bailed out by his backbenchers? My superstar panel assess whether the new and improved illegal migration bill will stop the boats next. And tonight, I'm joined by Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicol. Also coming up tonight, following the arrest of the SNP's now ex-Treasurer Colin Beattie, it was heartbreak for Humza Eustace again today as he was made to defend his scandal-ridden party at Holyrood.
I know there are some, of course, serious issues for the party that I lead, the SNP, to address. I'm not going to shy away from that.
Becoming the king of the understatement, but with the SNP's ineptitude, certainly nothing new. Is Lord Frost's call to put failing devolution into reverse the sort of bold action needed to restore prosperity in Scotland after the failure of scheming Sturgeon? We'll take that one on in the media buzz. Plus, as it's revealed Prince Harry will skip the King's coronation concert, is there any hope of a genuine reconciliation between father and son? Princess Diana's rock, her former butler and close friend Paul Burrell offers his unique insight into the scrapping royals live in the studio shortly. Also on the way, King of the Tory Wets Rory Stewart exposes Britain hating Biden.
And he, then Vice President working for Obama, said, I completely understand the situation. They hate each other. I'm Irish, I hate the English.
Told you. And finally, girl power, or just the pits. Do you support Hollywood actress Rachel McAdams showing off her unshaven armpit hair? I have a feeling that might divide opinion when we crown tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. But before all of that, the news headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you. Good evening. The top story tonight on GB News. The Prime Minister won't be deciding upon the fate of his deputy, Dominic Raab, tonight. Rishi Sunak said earlier he had full confidence in Mr Raab and has all day been considering the findings of an independent inquiry into alleged cases of bullying. The Deputy Prime Minister himself requested the report as the first allegation was made in November last year. 8 formal complaints were made about Mr Raab's alleged behaviour during his roles as Foreign, Brexit and Justice Secretary. Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry says a decision needs to be made quickly.
I think if he's got this report, he should just read it, and if the man's a bully, then Dominic Raab should go. It's really quite simple. There are many more pressing issues than this. Whilst the Conservative Party continue to be in chaos, the public have completely different priorities. Actually, what we should be doing is we should be having politicians who are focused on the cost of living crisis, on why it is that wages are stagnating, why we're having to wait for months, if not years, for hospital treatment. That shouldn't be what politics is about. Politics should be about making people's lives better.
Emily Thornberry. Now, the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges is urging junior doctors and the government to find a solution to their deadlock over pay for the sake of patients and the wider NHS. Nearly 200,000 hospital appointments and surgeries had to be rescheduled following the junior doctors' strike action last week. The Academy had helped to secure a deal between both sides following strike action back in 2016. Now, drivers are being asked not to pick up their mobile phones during the government's emergency alert test scheduled for this weekend. The AA is advising motorists to switch off their mobiles during the test. Laws banning the use of handheld phones will still apply, and the alarm will sound for 10 seconds from 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. The American actor Alec Baldwin's lawyers say they're pleased with the decision to dismiss the case against their client. Baldwin was charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter for cinematographer Helena Hutchins' death on the set of the movie Rust in 2021 after a revolver he was rehearsing with fired a live round. He was also charged with the injury of the movie's director, Joel Souza. Baldwin's lawyers say they have encouraged a proper investigation into the tragic accident. The astronaut Tim Peake has congratulated the American SpaceX team on Twitter this afternoon after their partially failed rocket launch today, and he encouraged them to test, learn and try again. Elon Musk's SpaceX sent the new rocket called Starship into space from South Texas earlier on today. The main launch was initially successful, but then the booster rocket module didn't separate as planned and it exploded spectacularly moments later, with the SpaceX team describing the moment very dryly as a rapid, unscheduled disassembly of their equipment that would at least give them more data to learn from for next time. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now in our media buzz. So let's take a first look at, just one front page so far, hot off the press. And it's the Metro. Elon, we have a problem. And this is, of course, the Tesla founder Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket launch, which ended in flames earlier today after liftoff when its booster failed to ignite. The 349-foot rocket was the biggest ever built. My superstar panel back with me now. Top Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Now, a group of Tory rebels may have delivered Rishi Sunak the silver bullet for stopping the boats. Yesterday, at a meeting with the PM over breakfast, dozens of honest, good Conservative MPs, including Danny Kruger, Sir John Hayes, Miriam Cates and Jonathan Gullis, demanded that he toughen up his illegal immigration bill. In a welcomed intervention, a new amendment will allow ministers to ignore European Convention on Human Rights rulings. A second amendment will also be introduced, requiring British judges to decide a deportation would cause, quote, serious and irreversible harm in order to block it. However, the pathetic MSM has pigeonholed the Tory challengers as being right-wing Conservatives simply for trying to stop illegal migration, which is, of course, what the majority of Brits want. So, honestly, Alison Pearson, this sort of, they're trying to make out as if these are extremists within the Conservative Party. No, they're not. Number one, they're humanitarians, because wanting to stop the boats is actually wanting to stop people dying and wanting to smash people smuggling rings. But they're not at all extreme. They are in touch with the membership of the party and also the wider country.
That's absolutely right, but I think we could have a list. It'd be quicker to draw up a list of what isn't far right now, Dan.
That's true, actually.
Milk, kittens, everything's far right. So we might as well embrace it. Yeah, this is what the majority of the country believes, Conservatives and Labour. I do think that the rebels, as you've named them, I think they have secured some very meaningful changes to this illegal migration bill, which is great. So the judges will lose the power, I think, to block migrant deportations. Now, there's been a big change in that the government is allowing ministers to ignore interim injunctions from the European Court of Human Rights, which that's a big change.
Yeah.
Before, they were going to give Strasbourg the power to decide whether they would play around with this Rule 39.
And that effectively is what holds up the flights.
That's effectively what holds up the flights. We've seen so often, haven't we? Do you remember that first flight to Rwanda was on the tarmac and these guys in Strasbourg stopped it and the government... yes, and the second change will prevent the UK courts from granting injunctions to stop migrants being deported. And there are very limited circumstances where that wouldn't apply. And as you said, where there's a real risk of serious and irreversible harm in the country they're being sent to. So the bar has been changed. And what this is about, Dan, this is about closing as many legal loopholes as they can, because we all know with those legal loopholes, the mass brigade of human rights lawyers, they'll be up through the loophole like a rat up a drain pipe.
Indeed.
So that's what this is about, and it's about deterrence. Because what they want, they know they can't...
Which is what stopped the boats in Australia.
Stop the boats. They cannot deport 80,000 people a year. What they can do is they can make people on the shore in France think, if I go across, I'm going to be deported. I'm not going to be...
Exactly, because I'm already in France, and actually I'd rather be in France than taking the risk that I'm going to be in Rwanda.
In Rwanda, exactly.
So, Sean Bailey, isn't it fair to say these, right-wing Tories have actually just done Rishi Sunak a massive favour?
I think the way I look at it is, the Prime Minister's listened to concerns of people in his party who are parliamentarians. That is the whole function of Parliament for me, people to have debates and make some changes. But the proof of the pudding will be in the execution, because if there's a gap here, somebody will find that gap and we'll be back to square one. But what most interests me is, what does Keir Starmer want to do about this? What do the Greens want to do about this? What do the Lib Dems want to do about it? Because it's easy to stand on the sidelines and accuse people of being right-wing and say they want to harm people, but there is no doubt
I know what they want to do.
People cannot continue.
Because it's what Amy Nicol wants to do. So go on, Amy. You basically want to open up the floodgates, don't you?
No. I think the reason that people are saying this is very right-wing is because I sat on this sofa once with Rebecca Jane from UKIP, and that is a far the right party than the Conservatives would claim to be. She said, I want to stop all immigration.
Far right.
All immigration.
It's a right-wing party, it's not far right.
It's slightly further right than the Conservative Party.
Yeah, I accept that, but that's not far right.
So this, at the moment, is a very right-wing policy to stop immigration, because...
Why? Not stopping immigration.
Hold on.
Because...
Amy, let's stopping illegal immigration.
But you are going to have illegal immigration when there is no safe and legal route.
Not true.
Systematically closed.
Can I just say something?
As I said
Amy,
many times on the sofa, if you're from Ukraine, if you're from Afghanistan, if you're from Hong Kong, you have a right to apply for a visa. Anyone else, forget it.
Can I just say...
anyone can apply for a visa, sure.
The point is, Amy, if this is a right-wing policy, many people now who are on the left will have to consider themselves on the right.
Yes,
So people in the Labour Party now run the risk of pushing people over to the perceived right. But the reason you can perceive it as a right-wing, because we have no response from the left.
I think it's
the left have to give a position. Now, if that left is the Labour Party, if that left is a Guardian, fine. But you have to tell the country what they want to do.
The position is to create and open up safe and legal routes, but there will still be the need to have asylum once you get to this country, because if you are in a persecuted country, if you are in a war-torn region, you're not going to have a chance to log onto a computer
I hate to repeat it, but you're being completely delusional, because all of these folk are in France, a completely safe country, and they are flooding in. So what you effectively want to do is throw open the doors to the UK. And I'm sorry, the vast majority of the country... Sorry, Alison, you come in.
For years, all human rights campaigners have said is that we need a realistic number, so say 10,000 people a year, which would be 15 per constituency.
Alison, immigration to this country has never been so high.
But again...
with the last immigration figures, this is the net immigration figure. The last one we had was 504,000 people. As you may have noticed, Amy, we don't have housing for the people we live here. We have vast queues for hospitals. We don't have enough GP
2 years waits for simple operations.
On and on and on. So actually, we can't have this. And the other thing about this, I really object to you saying it's a far-right policy to object to these people coming in. No, it is not. No, it is not, because the vast majority of people in this country want the government to get control of the borders. That's an absolutely normal response. People want to protect their borders.
And also, people know that these people are already in France, which is a safe country. Final word, Sean.
This is a real election risk for Labour.
It is.
If they do not send a signal about what they want to do, they risk losing this next generation.
And we know what Starmer said about it in the past.
Well, let's hear what he wants to say about it now.
Now, look, last week, Doddery Joe Biden's Gafford tour of Ireland. During that, I was very clear that the dementia-plagued president harbours an immense and irrational hatred of the English, which is just getting worse. Now we have further proof, courtesy of an astonishing tale from the Tory wet and former minister Rory Stewart. Listen to this.
It's also true that Biden enjoys playing up his Irishness and enjoys playing up his anti-Britishness. I remember when he was
I don't think he projected himself as anti-British.
Well, so let me give you an anecdote. So when we were briefing him on Iraq back in the mid to late 2000s, when you'd go in to see him, and one of my friends went in to brief him and came out completely sort of shocked because she'd gone in to try to explain the Sunni-Shia dimension in Iraq. And he, then vice president working for Obama, said, I completely understand the situation. They hate each other. I'm Irish. I hate the English. And that was his absolutely off-the-cuff, normal comment back in the 2000s. When you tell the story to anyone who's close to Biden, they laugh. He makes those jokes all the time.
So there can just be no doubt, Joe Biden, a genuine threat to our United Kingdom. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Alison Pearson, do stand by, because coming up with whom's a useless, floundering amid a sea of SNP scandals and party failures, is Lord Frost's call to put failing devolution into reverse the sort of bold action needed to restore prosperity in Scotland? My Superstar panel will return to debate that shortly. But next, as it's revealed, Prince Harry will skip the King's coronation concert. Is there any hope of a genuine reconciliation between father and son? And actually, do we really want that? Well, Princess Diana's close friend, former butler, her rock, Paul Burrell, he's going to be live in the studio straight after this to offer his unique insight into the royal family.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us 4, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Now, it may be one of the most important moments of King Charles's life, but Prince Harry will snub his father's post-coronation celebrations to return straight home to Montecito. A concert featuring Lionel Richie and Katy Perry is planned for the day after the coronation, an event Harry would usually be front and centre of, alongside fun non-royals like Fergie. But the crown will barely have been placed on Charles's head before the Duke of Delusions scuttles back to Meghan in California. The King had hoped to heal the royal rift with Harry and Meghan and even included a picture of the pair in the official souvenir programme released this week. But it seems the bitter couple have no intention of building fences. Well, joining me now to discuss this, Princess Diana's former butler, her close personal friend. She described him as her rock, Paul Burrell. And of course, Paul, you know a lot about this family. You obviously worked for the Queen and the Queen Mother, the late Queen, the Queen Mother as well. So what's really going on here, do you think? Because Harry is literally coming for a matter of hours. In the past, he absolutely would have been at the coronation concert. That's the sort of event that is designed for him as a more showbiz figure within the royal family.
Are you surprised, Dan? Honestly. Are you not surprised? He's coming to show face. He's coming to put his foot in the door. He's coming because his father wants him to be there. His father will be delighted that both his sons witness this incredible day of his life. But he's not going to hang around because, let's face it, he's pushed his family under the bus and he doesn't want to spend much time around them. So I don't think there's any chance of a reconciliation anytime soon. I honestly think that he's going to get a very icy reception from the Windsors in Westminster Abbey. He's going to be sitting 10 rows back. He's not even going to see his brother or his father during that time. He will be literally in and out in a flash. And don't forget, he did the same to our dear late Queen. And in a Platinum Jubilee, he was in and out in a flash. She didn't even know that he'd gone.
Paul, from what I'm told, there is huge fear within the Sussex camp, and this is the main reason that Meghan didn't come, about a bad reaction from the public. And surely part of Harry's consideration must have been, it's a concert, there's more people around, drink may have been taken, there's more chance of being booed at an event like that than there is at the coronation.
I don't think there's any chance of Meghan ever coming. I did say a long time ago, he will come alone and he will leave her behind. I mean, to make the excuse that it's the birthday of Archie. Well, Lilibet celebrated her birthday at Frogmore Cottages. Why couldn't Archie? That's just a lame excuse. I think she was scared of coming back to this country, and quite rightly, because the people of this country don't like the fact that she's stolen our prince. And she's literally brainwashed him, blinkered him, and tied him down to his California mansion.
And you think that's true, do you? You think Meghan has changed Harry?
I think she has enormous power, and she is hugely ambitious. And she wanted this from the very beginning. She wanted to own her prince. She could never own him whilst he belonged to the royal family. She could only own him when he left the royal family. And don't forget, Dan, when Harry met Meghan, she was 36 years old, a mature woman. His mother was 36 years old when she died. When Meghan whispered in Harry's ear, I think she said something along the lines of, I want to change the world. Harry heard Diana's voice, not Meghan's.
So there's still so many issues connected to the
Searching
loss
for
of
love,
his mother.
searching for love all those years. I mean, he was torn from his mother's love so young, and his heart never repaired. We saw that when he walked behind the coffin.
And the thing is, Paul, I do understand that, and I appreciate that's a sympathetic take, but the problem is, look at what he's done to his own family.
Yes.
There is nothing kind about his treatment of Prince William, about the fact that he has trashed the reputation of our future king. And in a way, actually, there'll be certain things in certain countries where Prince William never recovers from the damage that Harry has caused. And so the problem is, I do understand how much he was impacted by the loss of Diana, but if he knew Diana at all, and obviously you knew her as an adult better than anyone,
that's the difference.
She would be completely disgusted with the way that he has trashed his own brother, would she not?
Yes, because what Harry forgets is he was a child, living in a child's world at school. I was an adult living with his mother in an adult world, and the gap is huge. He doesn't know, actually, what happened in his mother's adult world because he wasn't there. I was. And that's why I said recently, with my cancer scare, I wanted to meet the boys because there's so much knowledge in my head. I would like them to know. I don't have an agenda.
So would you still be prepared to sit down with Harry even now?
I would. Actually, I would. Because it's his mother we're talking about. And he should know the truth. And actually, he'd learn a few home truths from me too. Because
So what
I'm a monarchist.
What would you tell him?
I'd tell him to keep quiet, to stop this. Stop this family fracas in public. Go behind closed doors and say what you want and feel, but don't do it in public. It's all done for money. You know that. He's a very wealthy man now. His brother is wealthier than his brother.
So he's got all the money he needs.
Yes.
He doesn't need to keep trashing his family because he's secured his financial position for life. And the thing is, Paul, I think something that Harry has missed when he tries to compare himself to his mother is that his mother had issues with Charles, right? That was about a romantic relationship that went bad. But Diana believed in the monarchy.
Yes,
she believed in the institution. Sure, she had some issues with how it was run, but the difference is that it feels like Harry and Meghan are trying to tear it down, whereas actually all Diana really wanted was the monarchy to survive and thrive under the late Queen, and then for Charles to abdicate so William could have taken the throne.
I'm proud of her sons because they were royal princes, proud of them because they were part of the royal family. And she honestly thought that Harry would always be there for his brother, would be his wingman, would be there when he became king.
And that was a big part of her strategy. Oprah Winfrey, his deathbed.
Yes.
The last weeks of his life were made incredibly stressful for the relatives around him who should have been caring for Philip because of untrue accusations of racism. And personally, I think it's unforgivable. And I think I will struggle to ever forgive Harry and Meghan for the misery that they caused the Queen, the late Queen, and Prince Philip.
He never actually got to say goodbye to our late Queen because he left in a hurry after Lilith's birthday.
But that's something he's going to have to live with, I'm sorry. And she didn't mind by that point, by all accounts. But look, I want to talk about the rehabilitation of Camilla as well, because, of course, we've seen this PR blitz, you know, one of her oldest friends, Lady Lansdowne, speaking out in public over the weekend, saying there was never any sort of a plan for Camilla to become queen. And now Camilla's son, Tom Barker Bowles, has weighed in. So have a look at this, Paul.
Does it feel weird for you to start sort of having
thinking
to refer
of her
to your,
as the Queen.
Not really, because she's still, our mother. I say speaking not the royal we, speaking for my sister and me. But she is she's our mother, and I think change happens, but I don't care what anyone says. This wasn't any sort of end game. She married the person she loved, and this is what happened.
So look, you remain one of the only, almost a spokesperson for Princess Diana on the planet today. You always have her
colours a nail to my
Yeah, exactly. And you always think of her first, whereas a lot of other people, for whatever personal, professional reasons, they've had to move on. How do you think Diana would feel about the rehabilitation of Camilla?
I think Diana was very gracious. And by this stage in her life, she would have found love and settled down. And I think she would have said, let them get on with it. She didn't bear a grudge. And I think she
would have been OK with Queen Camilla?
I'm not sure about Queen Camilla.
Because that was her worst nightmare, wasn't it, when she was alive?
It's been sold to us, hasn't it? I mean, from quite a meteoric rise, from the most hated woman in Britain to Duchess of Cornwall, to Princess Consort, to Queen Consort, to Queen. My goodness, there are big steps to climb. I think this is Charles's doing. I don't think it's Camilla's.
I actually agree with that.
I think he wants this woman who has loved him all his life. This is his reward. It's his final thumbs up to say, this is the woman I've loved all my life. She is now my queen.
Yeah, and you all said it couldn't happen, and look at us now. Look, just have to end with something very positive. Prince William and Kate today showing why, actually, you don't really need Harry and Meghan when you've got these two doing such great work. Look at this.
Do we have a seat for two right now?
Right now?
Probably half tea. Maybe half two? Yeah, 2:30. In about an hour. Yeah, does that work for you? Not right now, no.
I mean, Paul, I know the awful, Sussex squad trolls like to try and say, oh, William and Kate, they have such an unhappy marriage. I'm sorry, look at that. You can't fake that sort of love and joy. You never see that sort of love and joy between Harry and Meghan when they're in public.
No, what an incredible couple. She has never put a foot wrong. And Dan, in many ways, I think the future of the royal family rests on Kate's shoulders. Not William's, because Kate is the one that's holding it all together. She is going to become the people's princess in the footsteps of Diana.
Really?
Yes,
and you endorse that?
Absolutely. I mean, she is following her mother-in-law's plan. One day William will be king, Diana's son will be king on the throne. That will make me very happy. We've got to cross this bridge with Charles and Camilla because I'm a monarchist. We have to. It's a short bridge, but on the other side is King William and Queen Catherine.
Brilliant stuff. And Paul, just want to say as well, it's brilliant to see you looking so well after all of your health battles over the past few weeks. You've been absolutely amazing. So great to have you back with us. Paul Burrell. Now, coming up, with growing accusations of a political witch hunt against Dominic Raab by the woke blob, should the Prime Minister stand by his closest ally in a major victory against Brexit-hating civil servants? Fleet Street icon Calvin Mackenzie hits out at our Snowflake Society in Uncancelled soon. But first, after yet another calamitous day for Humza Useless amid a slew of SNP scandals, is Lord Frost's daring call to put failing devolution into reverse the perfect antidote to Scottish separatism? My superstar panel return to debate that. Plus, we've got more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages hot off the press. That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Our judges when deporting migrants to countries like Rwanda. The paper writes that any move would understandably lead to widespread public outrage. And by the way, I have absolutely no doubt that that's what the Lords are planning. My superstar panel back with me now. Top Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, former Conservative London mayoral candidate Sean Bailey, and the author and broadcaster Amy Nicol. Hapless First Minister Humza Useless has denied the SNP is facing bankruptcy as the party fights for survival following the arrest of party treasurer Colin Beattie and chief executive Peter Murrell.
You didn't. Statement to Parliament, as Douglas Ross asked, and are you facing bankruptcy, as he suggested?
We're definitely not facing bankruptcy. I'm pleased to say that we are in a steady footing when it comes to the party's finances.
Oh my goodness, it's like a spoof, doesn't it feel like I'm watching the thick of it? But in his first FNQ since the bombshell arrest, the fumbling First Minister attempted to distract from his party's ongoing woes.
So in the interests of transparency, will Humza Yousaf agree to make a statement to Parliament on the financial scandal engulfing the party of government here in Scotland?
I know there are some, of course, serious issues for the party that I lead, the SNP, to address. I'm not going to shy away from that. But let me also say that what I am doing and what the government I lead, what we are doing collectively, is focusing relentlessly on the day job.
After her absence from Holyrood sparked rumours that she was in hiding, scheming Sturgeon broke cover today, as did her husband Peter Murrell, who was spotted for the first time since his arrest as part of a police probe into party finances. Useless admitted the party still owes its former chief executive at least some of the £107,620 he loaned the SNP in June 2021. And Scottish Tory chair Craig Hoy piled on the misery for Useless, slamming the First Minister as a rabbit in the headlights. Meanwhile, Brexit champion Lord David Frost using his Daily Telegraph column to call on the Tories to use the Scottish separatist crisis to reverse the failed devolution process, branding the current chaos in Holyrood as a huge political opportunity, but one that must be seized by our government back in Westminster. So, I mean, Alison Pearson, this is an SNP implosion now. But do you agree with Lord Frost that actually maybe this could lead to a wider conversation about the state of devolution? Because it hasn't really worked, hasn't it? I mean, the SNP has driven Scotland into the ground.
Yeah, I know it's a tragedy, Dan, but it's providing such great comic value, isn't it, really? You have to laugh. And I really want Humza to last longer than Liz Truss, so I can hear you calling him useless for a little bit longer. It still makes me laugh every time.
He doesn't deserve to, but I think he probably will.
I think he probably will. Yes, so what have 25 years of devolution under the SNP done for Scotland? Basically a banana republic, dreadful education. They've withdrawn from most of the international monitoring bodies. Scotland used to be a powerhouse for education. Standards are rock bottom. Health service is dreadful. Most drug addict deaths in Europe. It was basically a personality cult. The Tartan Mafia held together by the personality of Nicola Sturgeon with alleged intimidation, suppression of critics, you know, and as David Frost says in his excellent Telegraph piece, a one-party fiefdom, really. And all that's fallen apart now. And a really good point, I think, that so it's being revealed now that the personality cult has completely collapsed. We're seeing Scotland laid bare, you know, the dreadful allegations of corruption and so on. But a good point that David Frost makes in his piece is that there was always the idea in Westminster that by giving them more devolution, you would silence the independence cause. And that just hasn't proven to be the case. The more you give them, the more they want. So I think David Frost has got a good point. I think this may be a pivotal moment, actually, at which Westminster, as it showed with the Gender Reform Recognition Bill, by pushing back on that, by saying we're going to stop them doing that, that actually got, you know, I think that's got a lot of attention. And I think this could be a moment for the London Westminster government to actually start making the case against it. I think it would take a lot to unravel devolution, to be honest.
But Amy Nicole, you think Frost is completely wrong to make this call?
I think it would be a massive. I think it is an insult to Scottish democracy. This piece that he's written, and to suggest that devolution needs to be done away with, and also be pro-union at the same time does not seem to match in my head, because if you do away with devolution, do you really think the Scots, who haven't voted Conservative since 1955, would want to be controlled by a Conservative party here from Westminster? I don't think so. I think that would push the call for independence even more strongly, and it would embolden Scottish independence.
Do you think Scotland is in a good way, Amy? How do you think they're doing as a country?
The failures of the SNP, I think, are one subject. The principle of devolution, which was a democratic decision by the Scottish before...
Well, let's get the verdict of our top Tory on the panel. Who are you with? Are you with Lord Frost? Are you with Amy Nicole?
I think, unfortunately, what Lord Frost is talking about is impossible, because if you unwound it in Scotland, you'd have to unwind it in Wales and then unwind it here in London. Ironically, in London, we have the biggest assembly. There's 10 million people in London, so it'd be big. And look, the real thing is this. Politically, where the government would look at this and rub their hands together is when the Scottish government doesn't deliver, Scottish people start saying, well, what they're doing in Westminster, same thing happens in Wales, same thing happens in London. So you get the pain with none of the gain. But I would say this, there's been certain things that have been achieved, certainly in London and a few things in Wales as well, that happened because local people, local government focused on them. And the real thing is this, just to counter Amy's point, giving of devolution actually pumped the argument for the breaking of the union. I really do believe that, because the minute she became the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, she dominated the conversation.
Absolutely.
No way.
And used lots of funny...
If you have strong, devolved governments, you will keep the union together. If you control from Westminster, then you are fueling the
The closest we got to the union being broken up was when we gave devolution, which gave a First Minister who campaigned on it relentlessly.
Yeah, indeed. Now, look, the Netflix woke bid to rewrite history by casting a black Cleopatra in their new docu-series about the ancient Egyptian queen has infuriated none other than the Egyptians themselves. So the show, produced by Hollywood star Will Smith's woke wife, Jada Pinkett Smith, was slammed by Cairo's former Antiquities Minister Zahi Hawass, who branded it completely fake because Cleopatra was in fact Greek and light-skinned. But here's the history-defying clip.
When women ruled with unparalleled power, as warriors, queens, mothers of nations, and there is none among them more iconic than Cleopatra.
I would die for Egypt. What would you die for? I am Isis. I am a god.
I imagine her to have curly hair like me and a similar skin colour.
I remember my grandmother saying to me, I don't care what they tell you in school, Cleopatra was black.
The Netflix woke agenda continues. Amy Nicole, Sean Bailey, Alison Pearson do stand by, because coming up, as Extinction Rebellion supposedly agrees not to protest but instead to guard the London Marathon route this Sunday. Should we be suspicious given their addiction to eco-terrorism at any cost? Find out when I crown tonight's greatest Briton and Union jackass soon. But first, with growing accusations of a political witch hunt against Dominic Raab by the woke blob, should the Prime Minister stand by his closest ally in a major victory against Brexit-hating civil servants? Fleet Street icon Calvin McKenzie hits back in just 2 minutes' time.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank. My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And breaking tonight, Rishi Sunak deciding on whether to cut loose. Dominic Raab, a spokesperson for the PM, said he is carefully considering the findings of the report before coming to a judgment about his deputy PM. But number 10, unable to say whether that verdict would even be released tomorrow. So now 2 months ago, the woke producers at BBC Newsnight spoke to one of the complainants, and in a witness protection style interview reconstruction, the ex-civil servant made these shocking accusations. Watch.
I saw him seething at other senior people, hard staring at you and raising his voice. He would cut people short, telling them to stop talking. There were long silences. I don't recall swearing, and it was never physical. Lots of it was what I'd describe as microaggressions.
I mean, come on, Mackenzie. Look, if this was the standard back at your days in The Sun, you would have lost your job as editor, I guess, after about 5 minutes with all of these microaggressions.
Yes, and not only for shouting at people either. The truth about the matter is, I would bet next year's money that he will not be sacked.
Good.
If that is the total substance of the allegations against him by senior civil servants, clever people who earn reasonable amounts of money compared to the national average, the fact that there is, quotes, microaggression going on, that should be the minimum that would happen. After all, you're asking people to deliver. If they don't deliver, what are you supposed to say to them? Are you supposed to say, I am very disappointed on behalf of the nation that you're getting paid £80,000 a year and you turn out to be hopeless? Please try harder. No, you're going to be really intense because that is the atmosphere, the political atmosphere. These civil servants know it. They don't like him. They didn't like the fact that he hard stared at them. Give me a break, okay? They have got to get on with it. And I think in the end, Sunak will stand by him. I certainly hope he does.
Well, I hope he does too, because to me, this is a test of both his political will, but also a test of his character, to be honest, Calvin. But look, I want to talk about this situation developing between Sunak and Starmer over who's tough on crime, because yesterday at PMQs, Rishi revealed that Keir's old nickname in his previous career, which he really hates talking about, as Director of Public Prosecutions. Have a look at this.
And we've increased rape convictions by over 60%. Meanwhile, he attended 21 sentencing council meetings that watered down punishments. That's why they call him Sir Softy. Soft on crime, soft on criminals.
And on the front page of the Daily Mail today, Calvin, the paper revealed that Starmer opposed the deportation of a despicable child rapist, Fabian Henry, who was jailed for 2 vile attacks on a girl of 17 and for abducting and having sex with a 15-year-old. But when the Home Office tried to put him on a flight back to Jamaica along with 41 other criminals, the Labour leader endorsed a letter criticising the move. So after Starmer's hypocritical attack ads against Sunak, we thought we'd give Sir Softy a taste of his own medicine, Calvin. Have a look at this. Do you think foreign nationals convicted of sexually assaulting children should be deported? Keir Starmer doesn't. I think we've got a little ad to show you. I hope so. We mocked it up earlier. That's not it, though, so we'll come back to it. But, Calvin, what do you make of this whole story?
Right. So what I would like to see happen is what I hope that you've done within your production department, which is actually to start. There was a shocking other case tonight involving another rapist who got 6 years. They wanted to put him on the plane, and Starmer and co. And it's always the left.
Yeah.
So if you actually do believe that these people should be back in Jamaica, by the way, you can't possibly vote Labour, because the leader and a whole series of other people, including the Shadow Foreign Secretary, always write petitions saying stop these flights. So the bottom line is, if anybody is soft on crime, it is seriously Starmer and co. And I have no idea why he thought that those posters were a good idea. They have backfired on him left, right and centre. If he's held to the same account that he's trying to hold actually quite an innocent person like Sunak, then he has failed miserably. And if he fails at that, what on earth will he be like if he ever becomes Prime Minister?
Good point. Well, look, we've been working away, Calvin. We've been working away. Let me do the big reveal. Can we see our attack ad? Oh, there it is. It looks beautiful. Do you think foreign nationals convicted of sexually assaulting children should be deported? Keir Starmer doesn't. So, yeah, I think maybe the Tories need to fight fire with fire now. Calvin McKenzie, thank you so much. We will speak on Monday night. But it's time now to reveal tonight's greatest Briton and Union jackass. My superstar panel return, Alison Pearson. Who's your nominee for GB?
Two people, Dan. Labour MP Rosie Duffield.
Oh, yeah.
Conservative MP Miriam Cates. They've joined forces to call for united action to protect women's rights. Now, these two biological females say trans activists must not be allowed to dismantle a century of hard-won protection for women and girls. And both Rosie and Miriam have endured horrible abuse for sticking up for their sex and my sex. I say more power to their ovaries of steel.
Love that. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My nominee is The Upper Lip, a newly launched satirical website which is looking to bring much-needed humour to British public political discourse. You really need to check it out. It's absolutely hilarious, run by two fantastic young men.
And Amy Nicole, your nominee.
So I've got an honorary this week. It's the actress Rachel McAdams. I wish I had this confidence. She's been elevated to total superstar status today because she posed au naturel with a mat of armpit hair fully on display. And it looked really hot.
Do we have the picture of that? Oh, I think we do.
Oh, well, we did it earlier.
Oh,
there we go.
There it is.
There we go.
There it is. What do you think, Sean and Alison? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Au naturel, I mean...
You don't sound convinced. But look, of course, it's got to be the ovaries of steel. Cates and Duffield coming together, our greatest Britons. Union jackass time now. Alison, your nominee.
It's the privileged brats of Just Stop Oil. One Edred Llymir Whittingham. Only the kids of the wealthy, liberal, left upper classes can get away with names with no vowel sounds whatsoever.
This was legendary. He needed to be great as Britain for this.
Oh, as if.
What a
he
moment.
needs to get a haircut and get a real job. But, of course, he doesn't need a real job because he's got a venture capitalist daddy funding this lunacy.
Only a few thousand people, Amy, paying their own hard-earned money for tickets to the Snooker World Championship.
Ridiculous.
And it's absolutely...
Totally agree. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
Yes, anyway, so we've had, quite enough of these entitled toddlers imposing their net
Couldn't agree
zero
more.
madness.
Couldn't agree more. Sean Bailey, your nominee.
My one is Andrew Bailey, the Governor of Bank of England, for failing to control inflation. He has printed enormous amounts of money and it's really pushed inflation and it's his job to sort it.
And Amy Nicole, your nominee.
Well, it has to be the tomato tosser himself, Dominic Raab.
So, in your view, guilty before being found guilty
One in
of
high
anything.
office must not hurl tomatoes at staff. I think we can expect that from our public. He
didn't throw them
public
at
life
staff.
at the
He threw
very
them in the bin.
least. I mean, allegedly.
At least
we have
use
no
the
idea
correct
yet.
facts.
Rishi, get reading that report because we really want to know what's going on.
Oh, and those microaggressions of all the staring. No, do you know what? I think if Rishi Sunak keeps Raab in his job, I'll have more respect for him. So tomorrow's a very big day for the Prime Minister. But look, I'm actually going to go with Sean Bailey on this and Andrew Bailey and the Bank of England because this is a hugely important issue. And, you know, these guys didn't like trust for a reason. Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey, Amy Nicole, my fabulous final superstar panel of the week. I'm, of course, back again Monday at 9 p.m. Next up as headliners. Have a wonderful weekend, you. Good night.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely
Right.
stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
You with GB News in a moment. Headliners, but first let's bring you the latest news headlines. And the Prime Minister will not be deciding upon the fate of his deputy Dominic Raab tonight. Rishi Sunak said earlier he had full confidence in Mr Raab and has all day been considering the findings of an independent inquiry into alleged bullying. The Deputy Prime Minister himself requested the report as the first allegation was made in November last year. 8 complaints have been made by staff about Mr Raab's alleged behaviour during his roles as Foreign Secretary, Brexit Secretary and as Justice Secretary. Well, the Shadow Attorney General Emily Thornberry says a decision needs to be made quickly.
I think if he's got this report, he should just read it, and if the man's a bully, then Dominic Raab should go. It's really quite simple. There are many more pressing issues than this. Whilst the Conservative Party continue to be in chaos, the public have completely different priorities. Actually, what we should be doing is we should be having politicians who are focused on the cost of living crisis, on why it is that wages are stagnating, why we're having to wait for months, if not years, for hospital treatment. This shouldn't be what politics is about. Politics should be about making people's lives better.
Now, the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges is urging junior doctors and the government to find a solution to their deadlock over pay for the sake of patients and the wider NHS. Nearly 200,000 hospital appointments and surgeries had to be rescheduled following the junior doctors' strike action last week. The Academy had helped to secure a deal between both sides following strike action back in 2016. Drivers across the UK are being asked not to pick up their mobile phones during the government's emergency alert test this weekend. The AA is advising motorists to switch off their mobile phones during the test. Laws banning the use of handheld phones will still apply. The alarm will sound for 10 seconds from 3 p.m. on Sunday. The American actor Alec Baldwin's lawyers say they're pleased with the decision to dismiss the case against their client. Baldwin had been charged with 2 counts of involuntary manslaughter for cinematographer Helena Hutchins' death on the set of the movie Rust in 2021 after a revolver he was rehearsing with fired a live round. He was also charged with the injury of the movie's director, Joel Souza. The actor has posted on Instagram this evening saying he owes everything to his wife and his lawyer. The astronaut Tim Peake has congratulated the American SpaceX team on Twitter after their partially failed rocket launch today, encouraging them to test, learn and try again. Elon Musk's SpaceX sent the new rocket called Starship into space from South Texas earlier on today. The main launch was initially successful, but the booster component did not separate as planned and it exploded spectacularly moments later, with the SpaceX team describing that moment as a rapid, unscheduled disassembly of their equipment. But they said, more optimistically, it would give them even more data to learn from for next time. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and on the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Time now for Headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearse, and joining me to go through tomorrow's newspapers are the top transatlantic comics. Scott Capurro, he just flew in from LA and boy are his jokes tired. And Big Dog, Nick Dixon, so named because of what it does to people's legs. How are you both doing?
I was okay until that intro. How are you? By the way, I'm from San Francisco. Hard to remember.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm not an LA person.
Well,
it's more your thing.
I'm from Scotland, and everything outside of Scotland is one big amorphous blob to me. But yeah, it was a bit unfair because your jokes aren't tired. You're famed for your wit and your fresh material.
Very sweet of you to say. Thank you. What
yeah,
about
and
you?
I've never urinated on anyone's leg, to my knowledge, so both intros...
It's not the urination, Nick. It's the rubbing.
Yeah.
Ah, OK.
It's the rubbing. Anyway, that's the awkward chat out of the way. Let's have a quick look at Friday's front pages. The Daily Mail has unelected lords plot to block Rwanda. That'll be talking about the plan, not the actual country itself. The Eye has Deputy PM Raab refuses to resign. The Guardian also leads with Raab fights for his political life. The Times has Raab stands firm as PM mulls over report on bullying. Adults complaining about bullying, can you believe it? The Express has just why did the BBC ignore MP's call to protect women? The Metro has Elon, we have a problem. And those are your front pages. We begin with the front page of the Eye, Scott. What's in there?
Happy Eid, by the way. You're welcome.
I didn't know you